Welcome to Broad Street Fanatics podcast for episode 11. And we are joined by Kevin Chouinard from Hawks.com. And he's here to talk about uh, this past Hawks Sixers game. And, and he will give his thoughts on this upcoming game tonight and the final two or whatever games there is in the final days of the series. So, welcome, Kevin, and I appreciate you taking the time to come
Thanks.
on.
It's good to be here.
Yep.
The question one out.
Okay. So, my first question is, what were what were your overall thoughts on the game this past Sunday night?
Uh, I thought that the 76ers kind of defended Trae Young the way that the Knicks did in the previous series, so that when the Hawks would do a pick and roll, it would often be a situation where the defender would drop back and that would give Trae a little bit of space. And in the second half, I thought the 76ers made a more concerted effort to try to put two people to defend Trae.
Yeah.
And get the ball out of his hands. And that seemed to work a little bit better. And so what I kind of expected, you kind of actually saw it a little bit in game one. When the 76ers did that, the Hawks took out Solomon Hill and put in Kevin Huerter because they wanted to have an extra player who is good at handling the ball, good at kind of making the plays off the dribble.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's kind of where the Hawks will start tonight. I think they'll expect the Sixers to come out that way, trying to get the ball out of Trae's hand. And so, they're going to have to play sort of 4-on-3 behind Trae, and it'll be up to Bogdanovic and Kevin Huerter to, try to make those sorts of plays.
Yeah, I was actually listening to the Philadelphia Sports Radio, and they were talking a lot about Ben Simmons trying to cover Trae Young. And I think that it's very crucial for them to have Ben Simmons on him. And I think that if he handles business and locks in and limits his perimeter shots, I think that will be a big advantage for the Sixers to get the edge of winning that game tonight.
Yeah, and when they do that, I think foul trouble becomes really important because it kind of works both ways. Like Trae Young is excellent at drawing fouls, and so is Joel Embiid. So, for the Hawks, they really need Clint Capella to stay out of foul trouble.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And for the 76ers, if they put Ben Simmons on Trae Young, they'll need to keep Ben Simmons out of foul trouble. And I think what really becomes important for the Hawks there is that they do a good job setting screens. I don't think they'll try to do a whole lot where Trae tries to work just sort of one-on-one against Ben Simmons. They'll try to do it as a pick and roll, and they'll need to set good picks for Trae if that happens. And if they do, then I think that's even more when the foul trouble issue will come out, because then you'll be then Simmons will be chasing Trae Young from sort of a disadvantaged position, and that might be something where Trae can look to try to get Simmons into foul trouble.
Here, go ahead, Alex. Go ahead.
I'm very anxious to see how tonight goes, and hopefully the Sixers can even up the series at 1. And I just think that Doc Rivers is gonna come out with a great game plan tonight, and they will be ready to take advantage of every possession.
Yeah, that lineup that they start is really good. The Sixers, when they started Seth Curry, Danny Green, Tobias Harris, Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid. They were 18-0 at home. They hadn't lost a game at home with that starting lineup until Sunday. So, honestly, the Hawks will be lucky to just get 1 out of 2. But they did that, and so I'm sure they'll make a competitive game of it tonight. But the Sixers are really good at home, and especially when they have their full complement of players. If Embiid plays, life gets more difficult for the Hawks.
Yeah. My question is, as the game started winding down, the Sixers got closer and closer and closer and closer on Sunday. Did you get nervous at all about the Knicks possibly blowing the lead, or what was your thoughts when the Sixers started cutting it close at the end?
I mean, I do think that's just sort of a situation where the Hawks got really conservative at the end, just thinking, okay, don't make any mistakes, run as much clock as possible. And when you do that, you tend to give up on some of the shots. They probably needed to be a little bit more aggressive on offense and worry a little bit less about the clock. But I don't think it's something where that necessarily carries over into game 2, because that was very situational, where the Hawks were just trying to maintain a lead. So I do think that ball pressure on Trey is something that the Sixers will try and should try and had some success with, but I don't think that whole last 3 minutes is something to worry about, because I think the Hawks were just trying to nurse a lead there at the end.
Yeah.
I think what's important for the Sixers tonight is give the ball more to Danny Green, and hopefully he'll get a lot more points than last game, which he only had 4 points, I think. And
I think I read somewhere yesterday that Seth Curry and Danny Green were 1 for whatever from 3-pointer, and between the two of them, they only got like 1 or 2 or 3, maybe 3s that one. And I think we need to get that working a little better, probably.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of teams want to try to pick on Trae Young on defense, make Trey play defense. And so I think that's the thought, if you try to get the ball to Danny Green. And I think that's a good idea from a jump shot perspective. Like if he can get an open 3-pointer, that's a good thing to do. But if, I think the counterpoint is that if Trey does what he did, he really did it against the Knicks too. Reggie Bullock and Danny Green are very similar players on offense. With Reggie Bullock, Trey just needed to take away the jump shot. Just try not to let Reggie Bullock get threes, because if you close out hard and just try to make it so that he's not getting an open shot and then he has to dribble and do something after he starts dribbling, I think that's actually good for the Hawks. Like Danny Green shooting jump shots could be scary, but I think Danny Green trying to dribble and make a play as he's on the move, that's not as scary for the Hawks. So, they just need Trey to be a good help defender and then just close out hard. And if he does that and Danny Green starts dribbling, then it's not probably the worst outcome for the Hawks if that happens. But I think Seth Curry hit a bunch of threes. He maybe it was Tobias Harris that missed some trees, but Seth Curry is scary as heck. Like the Hawks, if there's one thing they need to do better in game 2, is probably defending Seth Curry.
Speaking of Seth Curry, this was my question down the list of my questions, but sticking to this topic, I wanted to ask you what your thoughts were when Daryl Morey got fined for his comment.
I honestly didn't understand it. I thought maybe it was misinterpreted, because I think it was a play on words of the old saying, if you can't beat them, join them. And I thought he was saying that he couldn't beat the Warriors, so he joined them by trying to get Seth Curry. And I think the league interpreted it as, if you can't beat him, join him. Hey, Steph Curry, come sign with the 76ers, which would be the interpretation that would get you fined. But I read it the other way. I thought it meant that, hey, if we can't have Steph Curry, we can at least get Seth Curry. And honest to goodness, Seth Curry's just been unbelievable. I think he's playing like the best basketball of his career for the last month. He really looks like a handful.
So Kevin, want to ask the next question?
Yeah, if the Sixers come back and gain an advantage, do you think the Hawks can do what they did in Game 1 and make it interesting?
I'm sorry, I missed the beginning of that question.
If the Sixers, let's say the Sixers win tonight and Friday night, I guess. Do you think the Hawks how long do you think the series will go?
I think it'll be a long series. Like even if the Sixers win the next two games, the Hawks have been really unbelievably good at home. I think they're like 23-2 in their last 25 games at home. I'm not sure if that's the exact number, but they basically had two losses at home since like the beginning of March or even before that. So they're like 23-2 or something like that in their last 25 games at home. So I suspect that, even if they lose a home game, they'll be very competitive at home. And I think it'll be a long series. Honestly, 6 or 7 games almost feels like a lock to me. I think this one's going to be a long one.
Yeah, I really do agree. Alex, what's your question? Do you have another question?
Yeah.
Or are we going to go on to another series?
Oh, my other question on the Trae Young matchup. Speaking of defensive perspective, do you think Matisse Thybulle is a good matchup against him?
I was surprised. I thought he would be better than he was. I think he might be more suited to defend, shooting guards and small forwards than point guards. I thought when they were using him to defend Trae, it wasn't working out that well. I think that the Hawks did a good job of setting screens on Thybulle, and Trae just kind of took it from there. Once there was a good screen set, he could kind of just get Thybulle behind him and do what he wanted. So I think it might be better off for the Sixers to use. I think their best matchup is Ben Simmons, but they just have to be careful with foul trouble. Thybulle wasn't as good as I thought he was going to be. He's a really great defensive player, but Trae was kind of doing what he wanted, I thought, in Game 1.
I really agree.
So I forgot to write this down, but I just wanted your thoughts on Tyrese Maxey and how good he's been for the Sixers.
I mean, he has an unbelievable first step. He's just so quick. That's something that's pretty valuable in a playoff game. If you have a team that moves the ball well, and all of a sudden somebody with a great first step and a great first dribble gets the ball and your defense isn't set for it. So a couple of months ago, if you asked me, I would have been more worried about somebody like Shake Milton, but I think when you look at who's hot and who's playing well at the moment, I think it's Maxey, and he's the one player, offensively that I worry, from the Hawks' point of view, trying to defend off the bench. The Hawks have some good, the 76ers have some pretty terrific offensive players in their starting lineup, but right now Maxey's kind of the one scary guy off the bench.
Yeah. My question is kind of moving away from the series, but I'm kind of, I want your opinion on the Bucks net series so far. Because I think once James Harden got hurt, 30, not even 10 seconds into Game 1, I think we all thought it might have been over for the Nets, but obviously not. What are your thoughts on the Nets this series so far?
Well, I haven't gotten to watch all of some of the games. I've seen kind of portions of both the first two games, but from what I saw, it's kind of what I believe going into it, which is that if everybody's healthy, Kevin Durant's sort of the best player in that series. He's a better defensive player than people give him credit for, just because he's older now. He's not going to go crazy in the regular season trying to bend over backwards to play defense. But in a playoff series, he's basically 7 feet tall and can guard the rim really well. And the Nets are asking him to do that. And so when you have a 7 foot player who can kind of defend the rim, but also then be Kevin Durant on offense, that's a pretty amazing player.
Yeah.
So, I mean, even without Harden, I just think Kevin Durant's the best player in that series. And the Bucks have a nice big three, but I just think Kevin Durant is on another level compared to them, especially offensively. If Chris Middleton isn't feeling it, or if the Nets can kind of get into him and not let him shoot from the outside, then all of a sudden the Bucks become a team that has to score at the rim, and they get a little bit one-dimensional. And then you can kind of just load up if you have smart players who defend smartly and execute a game plan, you can come up with a game plan that slows down the Bucks. And I think the Nets have done it.
I think Milwaukee is missing a key piece in DiVincenzo.
Yeah.
And
speaking of key pieces that they're missing, you know who they're really missing? They're missing Bogdan Bogdanovic, because they messed up that trade. He would have been an even better fit than DiVincenzo. But you're right, missing DiVincenzo definitely hurts. Pat Connaughton is not as good an offensive player as he is.
Yeah. So do you see that series getting?
I think it's cooked. Yeah, the Bucks might get a game, but no, I think the Nets have them.
Yeah, I 100% agree.
So I wanted your thoughts on the Phoenix Suns and that series, which was game 1 last night, and it seems like Devin Booker, Chris Paul, Jay Crowder, Cameron Payne are locked in and are really unstoppable. And I feel like the Suns can definitely advance the way they are playing, especially last night. Do you think that the Suns will win that series?
Yeah, again, I didn't see that game, but I watched a lot of the Nuggets Blazers series, and I wasn't terribly impressed by the Nuggets. And again, the Nuggets have some injuries, but given the fact that they do have injuries, watching them against the Blazers, I honestly thought the Blazers, I guess the big thing for me with the Blazers is they just don't have enough players. They have their starting five. Yeah, I mean, Dame is fine, and CJ is good on offense, and Nurkic is good, but he got into too much foul trouble. And it's just, if I felt like watching that Portland-Denver series, in some sort of abstract theoretical exercise, if the Blazers could have played their starters 48 minutes, they would have beaten the pants off of Denver. It's just that every time they put in Carmelo Anthony, every time they put in Enes Kanter, every time they put in Anthony Simons, everything went to heck for them. So they just didn't have enough playoff rotation caliber players to mess up Denver. But Denver didn't really look that great. It was mostly just Portland's bench shooting itself in the foot to me. I mean, obviously Jokic is great. He's going to be the MVP. Michael Porter Jr. is getting so much better, but they're just not that scary. It just seems to me like Phoenix is a lot deeper than this injured Nuggets team. So again, without having seen the first game of Suns Nuggets, I would just suspect that the Suns are going to win that series.
Yeah, and we saw how deep the Suns were with when they played the Lakers and they beat them in 6 games. I was really surprised, and once Anthony Davis got, I thought the Lakers were going to win that series all until Anthony Davis got hurt, and I feel I kind of see the Phoenix Suns advancing through this round too, because they have so much momentum on their side after beating the Lakers.
Yeah, I think the Lakers win that series on paper against the Suns.
Yeah,
but if you watch the Lakers a lot in April and May, I think you could see a lot of, hey, LeBron doesn't look quite right. Anthony Davis definitely didn't look quite right. So, in some abstract world where everybody's healthy, I think the Lakers would have done a lot better, but they were just beat up. And Dennis Schroeder too. I think, he had some illness at the end of the season and he didn't look like himself. So, when
And
your
they-
first, your second, and your third best players aren't really themselves,
Mhm.
you're going to run into troubles. And the Lakers certainly did.
Also, I don't think they had Kentavious Caldwell-Pope that healthy either. So that didn't go quite well for the Lakers, I don't think.
Yeah.
So there was one more thought that I thought of. So down the road, when teams are good with trading players at the trade deadline, what are your thoughts on a potential Ben Simmons trade for Dame Lillard?
If you could do that, I think that's probably a good trade for the 76ers. The 76ers are such a weird team in that they have two magnificent players in Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. You don't really seem to fit together. Like they don't have enough offensive spacing. And here's the big one for me, like coming into this series against the Hawks, it's like, what's the tempo supposed to be? Because, I think if you just look at, okay, here's a team, we build a team around Joel Embiid, you want to play a very deliberate team. And if you just say, hey, here's a team, we built this team around Ben Simmons, you want to have a really fast team. And so you got, a guy who should be on a really fast team and a guy who should be on a really deliberate team together. And it just doesn't feel right. It's like, if you pick one tempo or the other, you're doing a disservice to the other. When I look at somebody like Dame Lillard, obviously he's such an unbelievable offensive player, and you'd want to pair him with a great defensive center to clean up mistakes at the rim, and Embiid can do that. So I just think that when you compare play styles, Lillard is a better fit with Embiid than Simmons is, and for that reason, that would be a good trade if you could get it.
Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to the trade deadline part of this year, and it's going to be very interesting all around the league and seeing what moves each team makes, and it's just going to be a fun time.
Yeah.
So you got any questions, Cameron?
I think we're good. I think we can wrap this up. Thank you for coming, Kevin, and we can't wait to see what happened in tonight's game.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and I'm looking forward to it.
Definitely. Thank you.